I'd like to welcome a guest today, David Freihart, known better as Viva Frei, one of the most successful proponents of free speech anywhere. David, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Good to see you again. We have met. We've met in person, correct?
Yes, we have during the biker protest.
I meet a lot of people, but I had a distinct recollection. I just can't place it with all of the events of the world. But great to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you. I won't take you long because I know you're a very busy man in Florida, which I wish I was there. But the last thing I have to last night, the Donald Trump Joe Biden debate. Is this, in your opinion, the end of Joe Biden as a presidential candidate?
I make predictions. We make predictions all the time, sometimes for fun, but sometimes to illustrate a deeper understanding of a situation. I think that this was a foregone conclusion a long time ago. I mean, I thought this was going to be an abject disaster well in advance. People were making the jokes, jack up Joe Biden with enough Adderall and whatever, and he'll plow through a debate, at least end up standing. It was an abject disaster. I have a sneaking suspicion people knew it was going to happen. People know he's totally incapable of doing the job, but they can't replace him for no good reason. And my hypothesis was set him up for a public humiliation so that even the team knows, all right, it's time to retire this player and swap him in for someone who is at least, a viable human of a candidate, if not a viable candidate. But it was an abject disaster. I placed some bets on it because now that I'm in the States, there's this sort of like a marketplace called Predicted. And you can predict on markets depending on what they cover. And they were having a market for who is going to be the nominee for the Democrat Party. And, Biden was at 87 cents, 90 cents. And I'm like, he's not going to be the candidate. I don't think he's going to be the candidate. I haven't thought he's going to be the candidate for about a year, probably closer to 2 years. And I put a little money on it yesterday. And his disastrous performance confirmed what everybody already knows, but they need to see with their own two eyes to feel comfortable saying out loud.
Well, I recently wrote a column for the Human Events where I looked at actually where this primary process began. And it was about the time of the progressive era. And there was no constitutional amendment passed to ensure that parties did this. So the Democratic Party can just overrule all of those primary proceedings, all of that popular vote, everything else, and say Joe Biden is no longer a candidate because we don't like him anymore. Do you agree with that?
As far as I understand, they can do whatever they want in the primaries. They have certain rules, but they could have. I have to understand exactly what a brokered convention looks like. But the bottom line, if he's mentally unfit or physically incapable or simply not alive anymore, I mean, 81 years old is past the average life expectancy, and he's gotten to that point and not in the best of shape. He's no Jack Palance or Clint Eastwood. I mean, he's gotten past the average lifespan, and he's clearly not well. So if he's just not there, they'll find the way to get around it. But they have ways to get around it anyhow because these rules allow for whatever they want. But people have to feel comfortable with it. What's truly astonishing is I was watching this morning, the replays of clips from the last month or so. Who's the guy? Brzezinski and Morning Joe. And
Joe, yes.
These hacks who are trying to convince the world that the emperor has clothes and that not only is Joe not demented, not clearly senile, not clearly incapable of doing anything, let alone governing America, they're trying to make the argument that he's stronger and better and more apt than he's ever been.
They undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been.
And then you see what happened last night. I don't understand how these people are still in a job. They need to be. They can't be fired. They need to be ignored and mocked into irrelevance because they are the most insidious, dishonest people on the face of the planet.
Well, one thing that occurred to me last night, David, when I was watching this debate and actually reporting on it, I thought of the 1960 uh, Nixon Kennedy debate, and people always said that if you listened to Richard Nixon on the radio, you thought he won, but if you watched on television, you were sure that Jack Kennedy won, and it didn't matter in this debate whether you watched it on television or you listened to it on the radio or anything else. Clearly, Joe Biden was out of his form. He could not put a coherent sentence together. So, how do the Democrats go forward here?
They need to replace him, period. They need to. They know it. Even the media is now walking that line. I mean, I thought CNN was setting him up because they know that he can't do the job and they need to find a way to replace him. And this was a good public humiliation to enable that. Whether they knew it beforehand or they thought he could somehow skate through, they have changed their tune in real time.
It was an unmitigated disaster for President Biden from the second he walked out.
President Biden seeming extremely feeble, seeming extremely weak.
Conversations range from whether he should be in this race tomorrow morning to what was wrong with him.
But he had a test to meet tonight to restore confidence, and he failed to do that.
The president's performance, which they think was dismal. Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside?
And you have the pundits on CNN saying that this is an abject disaster and what the hell are we to do? So they'll need to do it. The only question is, who are they going to replace him with? I mean, this is the beautiful state of at least the Democrat Party. All of their candidates are repulsive, repugnant, awful people to the point where they'd rather run a walking corpse than a Kamala Harris, who is truly detested.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
And truly, I mean, Joe Biden is demented because of senility. Kamala Harris is demented just because of, born stupidity. And then you got Gavin Newsom, who's so detested, people liken him to an actual lizard. And there's a meme on the internet that he really is like a villain out of a movie with human skin pulled over his lizard face. And then who else do you have? Michelle Obama, who I don't really go much on the jokes that Michelle is Michael and actually born a man. Forget that part. Michelle has no interest in ruining her life the way Donald Trump's life has been ruined by running for office. She wants to enjoy her Martha's Vineyard mansion, and they want to enjoy their millions of dollars that they're going to get paid for speaking gigs, yada, yada. And then who else? Gretchen Whitmer. Gretchen Whitmer, the woman who basically orchestrated her own kidnapping to win an election. They have no viable candidate. My bet, my prediction is only going to be Gavin Newsom, because I've noticed what I think, is what I call persuasion, in that they've even started making Gavin Newsom look like Joe Biden, wearing the aviator glasses, gray hair, tall, skinny. It's very subtle. Gavin Newsom has been fraternizing with world leaders. He's been gallivanting across the country, engaging in interstate debates for whatever the reason. So he's been already playing the role of president, but nobody likes him. But at the end of the day, the Democrats and Democrat supporters, they don't care. It's party over country, and they would vote Joe Biden in. They would vote a dog in if they didn't know that the dog was a dog. When I make a joke, but the Democrats are a lot like the Canadian Liberals. They'll vote for anybody who is on the panel. I have a dog named Winston, and everyone said, Viva, you could have run Winston in your riding. And if they didn't know that Winston was a dog, they would just check that name off the box. So the fact that Gavin Newsom is detestable and really, an abject failure as well as a politician, he's destroyed California. They just need a warm body that can string together a sentence in their candidate seat, and they'll vote for them because it's party over country. They would never even think about voting for the actually qualified and actually good candidate, Donald Trump. There, I said it, and people can hate me all you want, people. I don't care. When Trump was president, you had relative world peace, you had a good economy, and you had countries that, for whatever the reason, weren't messing around with America. Maybe they thought Trump was a loose cannon, or maybe they actually respected him, but they didn't do what they've done for the last 4 years to destroy the world that we know.
No, I think you're totally right there in terms of Donald Trump was very restrained last night in his comments to Joe Biden, who continually called him a liar and someone you can't believe. I've never heard such malarkey like this. But I don't think that really worked. And I want to segue to this if I can. In our own Canadian elections, which you've been so much a part of in the past, Justin Trudeau's leadership is on the line right now because he lost the by-election in Toronto, which is not just another by-election, it's a seismic shift in terms of people saying, I don't like Justin Trudeau, I don't trust the Liberal Party. Do you think, is it possible that Justin Trudeau is looking at this in the United States last night and saying, my fate is sealed? Because if they can, and they will get rid of Joe Biden, I predicted that a week ago in a column. If they get rid of Joe Biden, they can get rid of me. Do you think Justin Trudeau's worried about his future?
Well, he has to be. He has to be if he has half a brain. I think he does have half a brain, but he's sufficiently. I'll do a little armchair diagnosis. He's if not a sociopath, a narcissist. He's got some behavior disorder or character disorder that it's unclear to what he attributes the blame. I'm sure that he knows he's in trouble. The only question is he honest enough to say he's in trouble because of his own failings, or is he narcissistic enough to say he's in trouble because the stupid idiots of Canada don't know what a good leader he is?
Exactly.
And I think it's more the latter, because the man can do no wrong in his own eyes, and he can't admit that he's ever made a mistake, and he's got to double down, triple down. They have to know it's not just his leadership is over. I think the Liberals' reign of terror is over to some degree, but they can spin that loss. I forget what the name of the district is, but they can spin that loss and attribute it to vote splitting among the NDP and blame the NDP, because 4,000 votes went to the NDP candidate. I think it was 4,000 votes, and it was, I forget what the balance was, 15,000. Between the Liberal and the NDP, they had more than enough votes to beat the Conservative. But people are voting NDP out of protest, even though they're sufficiently ignorant to not appreciate that that's not a vote of protest. They're just voting for Justin Trudeau's little evil brother. He's got to know it, and he's got to be panicking, and he's got to be planning for the future in terms of what role he's going to play on the international world government that he's never going to be afforded in national politics ever again.
I would say you're dead on with that. Do you think there's going to be sufficient pushback during the summer from the Liberal leadership or the caucus or the cabinet or those backroom people who make the real decisions in the Liberal Party to drive Trudeau out as leader?
Well, it's an interesting thing. Politics is the dirtiest business on earth. And so in as much as there, for political gain, there might be a reason to push him out, much like with Joe Biden maybe a year ago. If you really want to play the dirty politics, there's as much of an incentive to watch him crash and burn and watch him take down the party to depths that they can then say, look what he's done when he's finally forced out, and then take over that position. And instead of trying to salvage the party now, let it really crash and burn, like what I think we're witnessing with the Democrat Party in the States. Let Joe Biden destroy it so badly that when there's that inevitable loss, because it's not even clear you could salvage it by replacing him, well, then you get to blame him, and then whoever fills that void gets to say, I told you so type thing. So I don't even know, do they push him out of the party, or do they let him lose and then he's forced out and they get to blame all of the disaster on him and then take another, 2-4 years to build it up and change course? I don't think it's going to make a difference. When we have our election, it's going to be 2025 or earlier. And I say we in Canada. They're going to get, the Liberals are going to get the shellacking that they deserve.
Yes. Well, I couldn't agree more. And we'll get back to the U.S. question here, because I know we're addressing both concerns across the border. Do you think if Donald Trump wins the nomination, of course he will, and he's bound to do it, as a lawyer, as a political analyst, is it possible he could be delivering his victory speech from jail?
I don't think they're actually going to lock him up. I mean, I don't. There's certain things I don't like saying because I don't even like putting that energy out in the universe. The bigger risk to me is not them locking him up and putting him in jail. It's something much more nefarious happening because these idiots in the left-wing media, and I'm looking at the Joe Scarboroughs and Mika Brzezinskis and Rachel Maddow's, they are whipping up their base into an existential fear of internment camps. Oddly enough, they're the ones who threaten them, but they're the ones who fear that the other party's going to do it. A little bit of confession through projection. But my bigger concern is someone's going to do something tremendously stupid because they've literally, and I mean literally, compared Trump to Hitler. Jake Tapper's done it. Joe Biden's done it. The Dana Bash has done it. And if you see Hitler ascending to power and he's gonna take control of the country and he'll do Hitler things, people are going to do the things that they think ought to have been done to Hitler to prevent that. So that I think is the bigger risk. They're not going to lock him up. Everything they've been doing has been backfiring, and there might be a bit of a shift depending on what time is it, because we're expecting a decision on the immunity question from the Supreme Court. There might be a legal shift where all of these cases basically fizzle out. I mean, you have to bear this in mind. He's been convicted in New York. It's going to go to appeal. It's the most bogus conviction possible, the 34 felony charges for a bookkeeping. I won't even call it an error because it wasn't, but the bookkeeping records issue. The RICO case out of Georgia is basically done for. Whether or not it ever picks back up, it's done for. Fannie Willis's career is probably done for. Then you got the DC case with Jack Smith, which is on severe pause. You got the Florida case, which is basically done for as well, if Jack Smith is not going to get in trouble there. And so this lawfare, I think, has reached its crest. And then the issue is going to be if the SCOTUS comes out with an immunity ruling that grants Trump a broad immunity, they're dead in the water. So I don't think jail is a real risk for him. I think the other issue is the real risk. They're going to get motivate a crazed person who thinks they have the political permission slip to do with the Hitler-esque character what people think deserves to be done with the Hitler-esque character.
In your considerable political and legal experience, can you think of a political figure in United States history who has been subject to this kind of persecution by his opposition?
I mean, Abraham Lincoln, JFK come to mind, and I don't like those names for obvious reasons. This has been revelatory. This has been revelatory for the world. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, and if things work out the way they should, Trump will win. He'll hopefully enact some of his policy of deporting the millions of illegal immigrants who have crossed the border in an attempt at infiltrating and basically taking over our country. I think this is a great replacement, but not racially based, politically based. And he'll hopefully undo some of the damage. But this persecution and its kangaroo court, I don't even want to say third world country because they do things differently in developing nations. It's Eastern European, like fascist level lawfare, more like North Korea than developing countries. It has been revelatory to the point where nobody can deny it now. The only thing that's really amazing is people are so unhinged and so deranged. They think somehow the more that he gets persecuted under the law, the more he deserves it, as opposed to the fact that it's highlighting how out of control this weaponized, politicized lawfare has gotten. But for anybody who's reasonably intelligent and reasonably honest, this level of weaponizing of the lawfare and political persecution, it's never before been seen. They've resorted to other means in the past, but this has just been organized, orchestrated, and basically telling the world the line between a free democracy and a kangaroo, Eastern European gulag type nation. It's very thin, and we're watching the Democrats walk that line, cross that line, and take a steaming one on that line as they do it, because they'll stop at nothing.
Well, final question. Final question, and I appreciate your probably not being prepared for this one, but what do you think is going to happen in Europe and the Middle East in terms of America being totally overexpanded, and especially in terms of goading goading Russia into a third world war? Do you think we're on the cusp of a third world war? I do.
Okay. Hold on a second. I hear this phone ringing. Hold on a second. Okay. Interesting, by the way. Empires. A lot of people draw some analogies to the Roman Empire, stretched too far, fighting too many foreign wars. Definitely, the Biden administration has overplayed its hand and overstretched its capacity. There's nothing wrong with isolationism to some extent. America doesn't need to be the world police, and oddly enough, might have been more effective world police if they hadn't, initiated regime change throughout the Middle East and throughout the world. It's not their responsibility to do that. But I think we're going to avert World War III. I think, oddly enough, the horrible man who's showing restraint in all of this is Putin and not Biden. I think Biden and the West and European leaders have done everything they possibly can to provoke an act that would trigger World War III.
I would agree.
The red lines that they said they wouldn't cross, that they've crossed, in terms of armaments, in terms of training soldiers, in terms of having soldiers on the ground, in terms of long-range ballistic missiles, they have passively tried to provoke a World War III, and I think it's but for Putin's restraint, or maybe he doesn't want to get into one either, that it hasn't occurred. What's going on in the Middle East? It wouldn't hurt to force nations to fight their own battles, because it might actually limit the size or the scope of those battles. It's when you have, the sort of someone who's egging on the bully, or someone who's financing a war or a fight that people themselves couldn't finance, that exacerbates them and that causes them to spiral out of control. One thing that's unfortunately clear, and we'll see when my kid brought me. My kid brought me breakfast. Okay, thank you. Get out of here. Get out of here. My kid brought me breakfast. Thank you. But one thing that's clear is America has lost its position of moral influence at the international scale. I mean, they've lost it. They've behaved in a way that has discredited them at the international scale, and it'll take some time to regain that. And there might be some shift in global powers, but that might ultimately not be a bad thing. I mean, the idea of backing out of regime change in the Middle East, backing out of funding proxy wars in Europe, it might not be a bad thing. It might actually be good for America and for Americans. So we'll see. That might be the silver lining in all of this.
I think it's a great thing for Americans, because I never opposed an American war in my life, because I always thought they were being fought for the right reasons. But I gave up when they started agitating with Ukraine. And I think this is insanity. And they are looking for a war with Russia. And I don't want to support that.
No, I don't remember when I had the revelation, but I remember my thought process back in the Iraq war, and weapons of mass destruction. And then when they didn't find them, they said, well, they had Scud missiles, and those were weapons of mass destruction because they could be equipped with chemical warfare. But that wasn't the weapons of mass destruction that the war was sold on. And then you realize that all that they were doing was looking for a pretext to invade and change regime, and that they had their two reports. One said yes, the other one said no, and they picked the one that they liked. And then I appreciated that probably towards 2016. And then you never look at anything the same again. You don't look at the war in Russia the same again. You don't look at their involvement anywhere in the world the same. And once you understand that the military-industrial complex, it makes money on both ends of the conflict and on all aspects of it. And so they want to give arms deals or aid packages to Ukraine. Well, once I understood how the aid packages work to Israel, and you understand, like, they're giving them money, so they give them the money back so they can sell them the weapons that they've manufactured through their military industrial complex, while laundering taxpayer dollars and taking their cuts here and there. You realize that they're funding both ends of conflict pretty much throughout history. And so
Exactly.
get the hell out of it. And you know, maybe let the countries fight their own wars and negotiate their own pieces, instead of, like in the case of Ukraine, being instigated or being encouraged to fight losing battles while everyone just makes money hand over fist, but you've sent a generation of Ukrainian men and women to the slaughter. So it might not be a bad thing. Isolationism to the extent
it might not be.
Yeah.
And I'll end this interview with this remembrance. I spent my Christmas 1996 in Bosnia as a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, which is now called the Royal Canadian Air Force. And I sat across the table with 3 Russian Special Force people. And on my side were 6 Green Berets. And these people were committed to kill each other just maybe 5 years beforehand. And the United States completely bungled, potentially, intentionally or not, peace between these 2 great powers. Because as Russia gave away its communism and wanted to be a member of the European community, America said, no, you're going to be subservient.
Mm-hmm.
And I always remember that moment, sitting across the table from people who were once committed to kill each other, but had now wanted peace. But their politicians have decided otherwise. And that's a tragedy.
They're fighting wars with other people's children and other people's money, and there's nothing easier, like I say, than going to Vegas and playing fast and loose at the poker table when it's not your money to win or to lose. I mean, it's your money to win if you make money off it, but if you lose it, whoopsie doodle, no harm, no foul. Let's go find some other people's pockets to dip into and find other people's children to send off to the slaughter.
So true. Thank you so much for your time, David, and God bless you. We love you here in Canada. And I'm sure the Americans love you as much as we do.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I'll tell you this, 2 things I love being called brother, and I love being told God bless you. So thank you very much, David. It was great to be here.
Okay. We'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Thank you for watching this episode of Stand on Guard and being a part of the KRAYDEN'S Right channel. If you've watched this episode to this point, you've watched it all. And that's really important for a small station like this. We always say subscribe, hit the bell, be a part of the KRAYDEN resistance. Resolve to resist. That's what we're doing. And if you become a subscriber, if you're a supporter of this station or a member through Substack, through YouTube, and now you can be a local as well, that's so important to us because I couldn't do this without you. I made a decision to become an independent journalist about a year ago because I wanted to bring all of my experience in the military, in journalism, to you. I don't promise anything I can't deliver. I don't offer clickbait. I offer truth. The truth is out there, and it's my job to bring that truth to light and to you. Thanks for being a part of the KRAYDEN'S Right resistance, and we'll see you again soon.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need a political change, but we also need to resolve to resist.